Let's start with the personal. You're going to meet with Nelson Mandela. You're in a rush. You leave your family in the car. You go inside to take care of business first. He realizes your family is in the car, and he tells you...
Well, he says, how is the family? And I said, the family's fine. As a matter of fact, my wife and sister-in-law and 2 grandsons are in the car. And he said, in the car? He said, bring them in. So he came, he asked for them to come in, and we were in the foyer of his office in his home. And he met my grandsons, my sister-in-law, and my spouse. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time.
And I think a beautiful corollary on that story that gives a sense of how Nelson Mandela knew who he was and knew what he represented. Is it true that he said to you, bring your family in, let them know that Nelson Mandela thinks that you are an important man?
Yes, he was very, very gracious. He looked at my grandsons. One was 11 and one was 13. And the first time they'd visited South Africa. And he looked at them and he said, do you know that your grandfather is a very important man? And I just couldn't handle it. I said, Nelson Mandela is saying I'm an important man? He says, yes, he's the United States ambassador to South Africa.
And of course, when it came from him, not only did it mean a lot, but it's also about what it was motivated by. It wasn't being pompous, of course. It was his sense of purpose. And that's something I want to ask you for some perspective on. We hear about his gentility, his amazing ability to forgive. But talk about the fire within this man, the forcefulness, the passion, the fierceness that he brought to what he thought was right.
Yes, it was an exciting time. I mean, it's a miracle that Nelson Mandela was the one who led us out of apartheid in South Africa, because he was the one who said, I'm not going to treat the whites as they treated us. He says, we're all one South Africa. We're all South Africans. And that was the greatest miracle that ever happened. But his commitment was strong. If you looked and talked to him, he always talked about others in the movement. He never accepted the credit. Every time I was in his presence and I would say to him how much I admired him and all the great things that he did and accomplished, he says, no, it was not me. I was not alone. There were many, many others. But the other important principle was that he believed in inclusion. When I was there, he was working on the crisis in Burundi. And there were some 16 political parties involved. And he said we must bring them all to the table. And that's what he lived. His politics, his life was one of inclusion.
And it's interesting, you know, he had said, one man cannot unite a country, one man did not unite a country. Obviously speaking to what you say about his recognizing the strength of the collective. But, you know, as we're remembering him, tell me what you think about this, the idea that it's not that he didn't feel anger, that he didn't feel bitterness. It's what he decided to do with those things. Did you appreciate the distinction there when you were around him?
Yes, he just believed in South Africa, and he believed in racial equality. And he believed that all people in South Africa should unite and be as one. So the commitment was there, but he was a very strong and fierce fighter, as we all know. He spent his life fighting that system, which was denigrating to people of color in South Africa. But his commitment was one of one South Africa, and that was just the miracle.
You know, as so many look at him now as larger than life, how special for you and your family to know that Nelson Mandela told them and told you that he recognized your worth and your value as a leader as well. It's a beautiful memory for you to have, as well as having worked with this person.
Absolutely. It's a strong memory. I was honored to be the United States ambassador to South Africa, but obviously at the time of Nelson Mandela, it was absolutely an unbelievable time for us. And I must say that when I paid on my farewell visit to President Mandela, I had asked his assistant if I could bring several books. I have 4 sons and their families. Could I bring those books and ask him to sign and autograph those books for my family? And he did each one of them. And not only did he sign it, he wanted to know about the family. He loved family and he loved South Africa.